Hello, everybody, and welcome back to D&D Delver. I'm your host, Miss Lexi. I am the young adult librarian over at the Harris County Tomball location. And today, what we're going to be going over is how to make your own map. I kind of have some examples that I'm going to show you guys later, but basically, I'm going to give you the tools so you can build something like this. Now, this is an amazing map that my boyfriend actually made. He's a DM. And then I made one too. It's not as fancy though. But I'm gonna show you guys the different materials that you guys can use, as well as different things that you can use to actually make the map, like popcorn or rice or pebbles or coins. Just depends. You're gonna hear me say this a lot later on in the video, but I like to make a statement about it because everybody feels as though when they make a map, it has to look like a map that we see nowadays. That's not the case. Remember, you are playing in a fantasy world, so you can absolutely make it a map that's so strange and weird and doesn't look like anything you've ever seen before, and have that be perfectly fine, especially if it fits your world. Alrighty, so let's dive right into it.
Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys two different types of maps that I have here. The first one that we have here is a map on canvas marked out with pen. So I'm just kind of using these as examples so you guys can kind of see how the terrain looks on here, where the mountains are versus forest and swamps. And so how you can see how the different types of mediums and canvases work with making maps. So this is kind of, as you can see, it's a more detailed map, and it has kind of specifics, towns, cities, villages, and it also has the terrain markage on it. The next one I'm going to show you guys, which is this one right here, is a suede or leather with just basic paint marked on it. So this is a very, very basic map. I made this so it had more of that traditional role-playing feel to it, where there may not be like a whole lot of detail, but you know, at least the major cities and then the continents and the oceans and things like that. So this again is kind of a suede leather and just normal paints. And for this one, for the first outlines, I actually used a Crayola, it was a Crayola colored pencil in white to do the outline because it could rub off easily. And I also used chalk as well for those two things. And then I went over it with paint. So today I'm basically going to be showing you guys the different types of styles that you can use to make maps. I'm not going to go into full details on how to make a map because I really leave that up to y'all. And I'm very much of the philosophy where you don't have to stick to the standard stuff. The continents you make on your maps don't have to look like the ones we see on our maps today. Because what's the point of living in a fantasy world if everything's just going to look like the mundane world? That's kind of my philosophy on it. Alright, so what you're going to need is you're going to need your medium. So you're going to need like canvas, leather, suede, or a piece of paper if you just want to test run it, which is what I'm using today. Since I'm not building a real map, I'm not really going to jump a whole lot of other materials into it. And then, of course, you're going to need something that's going to help you make your islands. So you can use popcorn, rice, or anything else that you find. I think it'd be interesting to do one with pebbles, like the pebbles you can buy at the dollar store in the big bags, or dirt. You can do it with a whole bunch of variety of different things. It just kind of depends upon how you go about it. And like I said, it just kind of also depends upon what you're going for. So typically, what I recommend is you have a pencil if you're doing it on canvas, or if you're doing it on fabric, a white colored pencil or chalk. So that way, if you mess up, you can just erase the line, or if you find out, oh, I don't really like this style or continent, you can just wipe it off the map and start again. But like I said, since I'm not doing a real map today, we're just going to kind of be going over, I'm just kind of do a straight up thing. And so typically what you're going to do, so I'm doing the rice first. And I'm going to make, now this is kind of a messy project. So basically what I'm going to do is kind of spread it out here. And this also does kind of require you to be able to see the bigger picture of these things. So here you can kind of see where it has, well, I don't know if you really can, but I think that just whitewashed it even more. There we go. Gives it a little bit of texture. So you can kind of see where it's larger over here, a little bit smaller over here, and then you kind of have this little loose area right here. So typically how I like to do maps is I also like the density of the areas to actually control like the type of terrain or the type of area that it is. So I'm gonna just kind of skim away some of these outliers around the edge where I don't think I'm really gonna need them. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm basically gonna shape over where these rice patches are. The majority of the rice patches. Now, you can, as I've said before, you can just do this however you want. If you want to make the edges rough, all you have to do is just kind of, you get to mess around with it a little bit. It's your world, you know? Um, it doesn't have to be a straight outline. And you can also go in and add kind of those rough edges to it after the fact. So, say for instance, you decide you go in and you just do like a straight outline, kind of like how I started here. And you do it with the white pencil or chalk or whatever you're using. And you go through and you don't like the straight edges. So you can just go through on your final draft, or what I would recommend even more is going through on your going through on a secondary rough draft and making the marks, the little wiggly marks. Now you can do this however you want, like I said before. So since I'm kind of just doing a little bit of a faster pace version here, you can tell I'm kind of picking and choosing where I want my lines to be at. You don't have to trace every little nook and cranny of uh, the rices. The rice? Yeah, the rice pieces. But all you have to do, go through, kind of outline the shapes. Now, I really, like I was saying before, I kind of like having uh, the density of the area kind of dictate what that area is going to look like. So for me, I like putting a little woo there. Okay. Wee. So, like I said, it's your map. You can do it however you want. You can always backtrace and go over it again. Um, but I kind of like having little odd shapes that stick out at the sides that don't really, that you would think don't really normally belong on a map. But I like having them. And it's okay if the whole thing doesn't fit, because that means you can just add more to it later and make it on a larger canvas. So there's kind of our basic form right now, right? Like I said, so this area is really dense, right? So I'm probably going to make this a little mountain area. Now, if this was my rough draft, what I'd be doing is I'd probably be writing this off to the side. And let's say down here is really thin, so I'd want it to be swampy. And then over here, I think we'd pretty much just kind of have a mix of plains and forest. And so with this, it's very kind of, like I said, you kind of pick and choose where you want your little islands to be, or where you want your circles and dots and shapes. But I like having the density thing kind of dictate what I do sometimes, because it's it makes it different. It like here's the thing. I've played with people where they get so caught up into the technical aspects of these maps to where they're like, well, a swamp wouldn't be after mountain terrain, or swamps are more likely found on the on the coasts and things like that. Yeah, that's true in our world. But here's the thing. D&D is a fantasy game, so it doesn't very much matter what or where you put your terrain. It just has to make sense in that world, not necessarily our world. All right. Alrighty. So, as you can see, this was rice. I'm going to kind of hold this up so you guys can get a better look at it. So you can kind of see like it was a little bit clumped. And as I said before, I could have also chosen to split the rice here and made this into two separate continents as well, and not even have this section here. So, I mean, it's really just how you want to split it or how you see it. So that was rice. And I believe this map was actually used making rice as well. The next map, or the map on the suede that I showed y'all earlier, was used making popcorn. So I'm going to kind of show you that aspect now. Flip this over. Bend that light. Alrighty. So with canvas or anything like that, I'm probably going to get some grease stains on here because it's buttered popcorn. But you typically don't have to worry about that on grease. Or, I'm sorry, you typically don't have to worry about that on canvas. Popcorn's going to be a little bit harder because it tends to want to space out a lot. So normally if I see that happening, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of take a few bits. And here's the thing. The one thing I absolutely love about map processing is it's just completely random. It doesn't have to have a rhyme or reason. It just has to kind of, it's an abstract art in a way when you're first starting. Because, again, you don't want it to look like the place that we know now. You want it to look like a fantasy world, something that's in your head, right? Majority of us do. So, I just kind of shake it around. When it comes to popcorn, I kind of shake it around and I get it into like little bits and chunks that I want to see it in, like something that's visually appealing to me. Sometimes I'll even position it. What I think I'm going to do here. Yeah. Okay. I see it now. Cool. So then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to trace the outline. Like I said, I would just do like a basic outline with your pencil or map, or not map. I'd do a basic outline with like your pencil or your chalk first, kind of like how I'm doing here. And you can kind of decide where you want to do the jagged lines, straight lines, things like that. But if you do the straight lines first, it kind of gives you a generic outlook on what you want to see. You can also take the opportunity when there's holes like this to use them as lakes, ponds, waterways, things like that. And sometimes if there's like this, I don't know if you can see it in here, but there's like this little pathway right in between these. So sometimes I like to use like a little river, draw a river coming from that. Like I said, I like kind of using the randomness of the popcorn and the rice to kind of dictate my terrain. It makes it a little bit more unique and less likely to be repeated. So it's not something you'll see if you'll just go on to like a generator or a map generator or something like that, which is also a very viable option. But if you're crafty and you like to be crafty, this is kind of a method that you can use to use it. Alright, so I'm about to show you here the difference between rice and popcorn. Other than the grease stains you're going to see because I used normal paper. Alright. So, alright. This was the rice, right? It's very kind of distinct, clear edges, a little bit more jagged, a little bit more tailed around the edges. Even just like with the little bits up here, like it's a little bit more detailed. Now with the popcorn, your generic shapes are going to be much more bulky, and they're going to have kind of smoother edges unless you go in and you add details to that. So like I said, I like using some of the areas to kind of dictate. Now the downside with popcorn versus rice for me is with popcorn you don't get those heavily dense areas or thinner areas like you did with rice. So I can't really say, okay, well this is going to be a wooded area or this is going to be a swampy area or a mountainous area. But the plus side with popcorn is you get a lot more areas where there's lines, kind of like how I drew here for like a river. You get a lot more areas where you can kind of connect the lines and draw them out for waterways. And you get more dense areas where there's patches or holes for like lakes and terrains. Actually, you know what we're going to do? I didn't plan on this, but we're going to do it anyways, is we're going to see what happens when I combine the two methods. So I'll do rice for the area for the map for the lands. Let's see what we got here. Sometimes it takes a minute to get it how you want it. we got our land mass. So we have our land mass. And part of it, a lot of it was kind of swampy. So I think we're going to put some swamps here. This was a little bit more dense, so we'll do mountain ranges here. We're going to do beach area over here. I like to mark the beach areas much by how thin it gets around the edges. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of layer this over top. And see, as I was saying about the popcorn earlier, you guys get a lot of these big chunks here. So let's So I guess that kind of worked out okay. Combining the two methods, the rice gives you a little bit more of a defined edge to it, and then you have randomized waterways, so we have a couple lakes. And I was thinking over here, as you can see, I did this huge little thing right in the center of the mountain, right? So what if we drew really, really, really tall mountains up around them? It could be some type of monastery, some type of special landmark, a magical lake. It could be anything like that. I like things that are kind of hidden away. So just kind of a recap. So this was using both rice for the land masses and the land terrain, and then popcorn for the waterways. And then we had straight up popcorn, straight up rice. I do like this one a little bit more just because the edges around here are a little bit rougher, but like I said, that's all kind of detail that you can go back in later and fix at any point in time. But that's pretty much all I had for today. A lot of my videos, I like to give you guys. So for a lot of the videos, I like to give you guys the mechanics to use everything. But not tell you exactly how to do it, because imagination is the key when, especially if you're building a homebrew world. And if you're watching this video on how to make a map, then I'm assuming it's about the homebrew world. But yeah, that was pretty much all I had for today. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.